Cutter top 10, Cutter top 10. You know you liked it a lot. Time to see who is the best and the worst at stuff. You know, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, NASCAR, wrestling. If I have to, so please join me. Why don't you read? This is Cutter's top 10. Hey there, Heather, ho there! It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. We're ready to rumble! Oh. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond with one more top 10 for the date of Friday the 13th. And it's the top 10 NFL quarterback controversies of all time. There were a couple of honorable mentions, by the way. So I'm going to say them right now. Honorable mention number 1. North Van Brocklin, Bob Waterfield. You gotta go way back in the 1950s for this. Yeah, no. The battle between Van Brocklin and Waterford is the original quarterback controversy, and it was huge. Bob Waterfield was already a solid quarterback for the Rams when Van Brocklin was drafted in 1949. The head coach decided to have Van Brocklin and Waterfield take turns playing quarters. Like, you'll have one guy with 2 quarters play one with the other. It's amazing how the Rams still had success because they reached back-to-back NFL championship games and won the one in 1951. Waterfield retired in 1952, so Van Brocklin got to be the full-time starter. Honorable mention number 2, Robert Griffin III, Kirk Cousins, and Colt McCoy. Robert Griffin III was supposed to be the quarterback of the future for the Redskins that they've been searching for years. In 2012, he was drafted 2nd overall, and Kirk Cousins was even drafted that same year by the same team as an insurance policy in the 4th round. RG3 had a good rookie season, but injuries started to pile up. Cousins was sporadic in 2014. And Jay Gruden, the coach, decided to put Colt McCoy in, the former Texas star. When McCoy beat Dallas on Monday night, it was a 3-way battle. But in the offseason, in the 2015 offseason, Cousins got the starting job in training camp and led the Redskins to a divisional victory. Number 10, Rob Johnson and Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie was not a good NFL quarterback, but people liked his scrappiness and recognizability. Doug Flutie was drafted by the Bears, and then he bounced around from the Bears to the Patriots. And then in 1990, he went up north to Canada, played a couple years for BC, and then went to the Calgary Stampeders and the Toronto Argonauts, among other teams. Flutie decided after 1998 after 97 and leading the Argos to yet another Grey Cup win, but 2nd straight, he decided to play for Buffalo. Unfortunately, the Bills signed Rob Johnson to a massive contract. Even though Rob Johnson only had one decent game for the Jacksonville Jaguars in 1997 when he replaced an injured Mark Brunell on opening week. So anyway, Rob Johnson got injured and Doug Flutie came in with 8 wins and 11 starts, which is amazing for him. The next season, Flutie started the first 15 games. He went 10-5. Rob Johnson played in week 17, and I think that was a loss, if memory serves me correctly. And that made the Bills go to Tennessee for the wild card round. Now at 13-3, you're thinking, wait, why is Tennessee in the wild card weekend? Aren't they in the divisional playoffs? You have a 14-2 Jacksonville Jaguars team in the same division, and that team pounded Dan Marino into retirement, if memory serves me correctly. So anyway, Rob Johnson decided to, Wade Phillips decided to make Rob Johnson the starter, even though he didn't play well, and the Bills lost. And of course, Music City Miracle ruined everything. Johnson was named the starter, and Flutie was let go to San Diego. Number 9, Joe Gilliam and Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw was the first pick by the Steelers in 1970. Of course, that team went 1-13. The Louisiana Tech quarterback helped Pittsburgh get out of the trouble. In 1974, though, Bradshaw was struggling, and Chuck Noll decided to bench Bradshaw for Joe Gilliam, who was a pretty good quarterback with a rifle arm. He was pretty It was pretty good, but when Chuck Noll had issues with Gilliam and the fact that Pittsburgh was always a run first pass second team, he decided to bench Gilliam for Bradshaw, and the Steelers won Super Bowl IX that year. Number 8, Craig Morton and Roger Staubach. This was amazing. Craig Morton, first round pick of the Cowboys in '65, and Roger Staubach came in 1969 after serving a 2-year hitch in Vietnam because, he played for the Naval Academy, and they usually have the 2-year hitch. It's kind of like David Robinson, because even though he was drafted first overall in the '87 draft, he had to serve a 2-year military commitment before playing with the Spurs. And if you watch the top 10 NBA draft lottery moments on YouTube, the San Antonio GM says, "We've waited 14 years. What's 2 more?" And patience paid off for the Spurs. But as I digress, in 1971, Tom Landry now had an issue. He decided to alternate Morton and Staubach between plays. Staubach won the starting job the next season thanks to winning a playoff game, whereas Craig Morton lost Super Bowl V for the Cowboys. That was known as the Blunder Bowl because of 8 turnovers between the two teams. Staubach ended up being the starter for good. Craig Morton was sent out of town. Contrary to popular belief, he didn't play for Denver after Dallas. He played for the Giants, and then the Giants got rid of him to Denver. And strange enough, Denver actually got to Super Bowl XII in 1978 as the AFC representative, and the NFC representative was Dallas. So Morton faced Staubach in the Super Bowl, and Morton just stunk like skunk cabbage. Number 7, Brady Kosar and Vinny Testaverde. Brady Kosar was a standout with the Miami Hurricanes and ended up being drafted in the supplemental draft for the Browns in 1985. Amazing why no one wanted to take him in the regulation draft. Kosar was a fan favorite. Really good. So anyway, Bill Belichick ended up being the head coach of the Browns in the early 90s when Kosar's skills started to fade and Cleveland wasn't going anywhere in the leagues, and the two didn't like each other very much. The Browns actually ended up signing Vinny Testaverde, who used to be the number 1 pick. Well, Vinny Testaverde used to play for the Miami Hurricanes. He was the quarterback after Kosar, if memory serves me correctly, because Testaverde was drafted in 1986 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Browns got Vinny Testaverde in '93. The two quarterbacks, Kosar and Vinny, would split time that season. Kosar was released halfway through the season because of Bill Belichick's anger. So anyway, Kosar ended up being the backup quarterback for the '94 Cowboys that won the Super Bowl. So he got a ring somehow. I think Ernest Biner, though, too, because Ernest Biner was a Cleveland institution, and then he got signed up by the Redskins, and they won the Super Bowl in '92, so he got a ring there. Number 6, Jay Schrader and Doug Williams. The Redskins didn't know what to do after Joe Theismann's gruesome Monday Night Football injury. They had Jay Schrader, who was good. When the Redskins were beaten in the '86 NFC title game by the Giants, doubts about Schrader actually rose, with Doug Williams fresh off some good years with Tampa Bay, but left Tampa Bay because of their penny-pinching owner. On the bench, Schrader actually got injured the first week of the '87 season, and the two quarterbacks got equal playing time. The Redskins made the playoffs. Doug Williams was asked to carry them through the postseason, and he did. Doug Williams threw for 4 touchdowns, Super Bowl 22, 340 yards, to beat the Broncos. Jay Schrader was never heard from again. Number 5, Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe. A big controversy at that. Bledsoe was ready to play his heart out, but in week 2 of the 2001 season, aka the third actual week, it would have been week 3 because, remember, 9/11 wiped out that week, the second week, the official second week of the season. So anyway, Bledsoe was good, but then he got hit by Mo Lewis of the Jets out of bounds. Tom Brady's 6th round pick came in and lit up the league by getting to the Pro Bowl, and actually was 11-3 as a starter. Pretty impressive. Bledsoe actually came back to the team in action in the AFC title game because Brady got injured himself with a knee injury. Bledsoe led the Pats to the win in Pittsburgh, and it was controversial. to say the least. Tom Brady was allowed to start in the Super Bowl, and thanks to his heroics, the Patriots won the Super Bowl against the high-powered, greatest show on turf St. Louis Rams. Bledsoe would then sign on with the Bills, and it went downhill after that. Number 4, Phil Simms and Jeff Hostetler. Phil Simms was a legend in the Big Apple after leading the Giants to the '87 Super Bowl. But in the 1990/91 season, Simms' foot injury near the end of the season cost him dearly. Jeff Hostetler from West Virginia was serving as a backup and came to lead the Giants to another Super Bowl victory. And then, I forget the coach, because Bill Parcells was gone that year. Ray Knight, Ray Kramer, I don't know who his last name is. He decided to make a battle between Hostetler and Simms battling for the starting job the next season, and Hostetler got the nod. But the controversy would not end until '93, when Hostetler was actually released and signed by the Raiders, and Phil Simms retired the next season. Number 3, Drew Brees and Philip Rivers. The Chargers had 2 super-duper quarterbacks. Drew Brees was picked second round, from Purdue in the 2001 draft, and was serviceable. And the Chargers couldn't resist, so 3 years later, they decided to pick up Eli Manning as their number 1 draft pick, probably to light a fight for Drew Brees. But Eli didn't want to turn up in San Diego because he thought the prospects were bad about financial reasons and commercialability. So the Giants ended up drafting Philip Rivers from NC State, and they did a swap. Eli would go to the Giants, Philip Rivers would go to San Diego. Brees did pretty well, and the Chargers went 12-4 that very season. San Diego had a troublesome decision. Keep the quarterback who was due a huge payday, or go with the second-year player who was a high draft pick from the Giants. The Chargers decided to send Drew Brees on his way and stick with Philip Rivers. But Brees had the last laugh, as he and his Saints shocked everyone in 2010 by winning the Super Bowl. Chargers have not been to a Super Bowl since 1985, let alone win one. Number 2, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. You kind of had a hunch this was happening. Aaron Rodgers was picked in the first round of the 2005 draft to be the understudy to Brett Favre. The Cal quarterback had a lot to learn because Brett Favre's backups were serviceable. He had Tim Couch, Ty Detmer, Matt Hasselbeck, I would say Rodney Peete, but I'm wrong. Who else was the backup to Brett Favre? Magic Man Don Mikowski, Mark Brunell was the backup to Brett Favre at one time. They did this top 10 backups, and it was Brett Favre's backup tree. So anyway, Favre wanted to retire, so the Packers decided to give Aaron Rodgers a chance. Favre backed out of his retirement and wanted to still play for Green Bay, but Rodgers was the starter. Favre didn't want to be a backup. Well, after all, he had a 200-plus career consecutive starts as a quarterback. So he left the franchise and signed with the New York Jets. He had a decent year, and then they couldn't beat Miami at the last game of the season. That actually would have helped the Jets get in as a wild card, and the Pats get in as the division champions. And then, of course, Favre went to Minnesota for 2 years, blew the NFC title match with New Orleans, and of course, New Orleans won the Super Bowl. And Aaron Rodgers has a Super Bowl ring. Number 1, you can probably guess what number 1 is. Yes, it's Joe Montana and Steve Young. Steve Young was legendary at BYU, but Tampa didn't want to give him a chance at starting quarterback. So after 2 years, Young was sent to San Francisco during the draft for a draft pick, and he backed up Joe Montana. San Francisco knew what they were doing because they were trying to get the young guy to nip at Joe Montana's heels and tell Montana, you're not getting the job by default. Montana did pretty well, leading the Niners to their best stretch ever, 4 Super Bowls. But in the twilight of his career, Steve Young had to come in for Montana because of injuries. The Niners decided to go with Steve Young because of his prime. He was still in his prime, Joe Montana was not. Montana went to Kansas City. Niner fans were mad. And even worse, they were mad because Montana faced Steve Young in a regular season game, Kansas City for San Francisco, and the Chiefs won that game. But Steve Young did get that monkey off his back by leading the Niners to a Super Bowl victory. So it was all forgiven. So anyway, that's the top 10 for now. There'll be more top 10s coming up in the days ahead.